All right. So I read that you had already been using the machine and you were familiar with the Air Assist and the operation of most of those kinds of systems. So is that
Mm,
accurate? Okay. All right. Is there
yes.
some specific stuff you wanted to go over, or did you want me to do kind of my usual spiel in Lightburn and maybe glean some stuff from there? I don't want to go over stuff that you've already seen or already know about, you know. Um, so we can kind of custom tailor this however you like. Um, let's see, we
Uh,
can get that. So let's just pop open.
well, I do.
Go ahead. I'm gonna look through the settings in Lightburn while yeah, if
Okay.
you could pull that up for me, I'll let you drive for a minute. I'm not super Mac savvy, so um, and then we can kind of.
Um, the camera, I haven't got it connected yet,
Okay.
and I was wanting to know the ports on the side. If I use a splitter on the inside, can I do that? Because
Uh,
I've tried one way, and it doesn't see the camera.
mhm. Um,
And
yeah, we can go over that stuff. Let's see, is I was gonna see if you could get Lightburn pulled up for me while we
yeah,
okay,
what is
maybe.
this?
The I've got some documentation I can pull up. See, did you get the Thundercam?
Yes, I got it directly from Lightburn.
Oh, okay. Well, see, our Thundercam kit comes with some adapters so that you can use one of the ports that's not in use. Um,
Uh huh.
you can you can use a splitter, a hub, but it really needs to be a powered one. Especially if you're using that long blue USB that came with it. USB doesn't like length; it picks up a lot of noise. Um,
Uh huh.
but I'll show you the documentation of how we set up our Thundercam kits, and
Okay.
and that way you can have an idea. And I think that looks right. I'm going to switch to millimeters just for a minute because when I'm in settings,
Uh huh.
I do better in millimeters. Okay, yeah, those look right. I'm Let me give you that extra tenth of a millimeter back, and all of that looks good. Okay. So, oh yeah, let me check the. You probably already. It looks like you've done your homework. Let me see. Let me pop that in there
I've
once.
done a little bit.
Okay,
Check it.
gotcha. Okay, so all that stuff looks good. Let me see if I can get down to your. Do you use Chrome or do you use Safari? Safari. Okay, let me pop this back open and let's just go to support real quick. So under cam installation, this is just a Lightburn camera, and we just add a couple extra things. So what we add uh, is this little adapter, this gender changer, and then a another extension cable like this. So what we do is see these three ports right here on the side of the machine. Those are just about a foot long. They go right inside and connect here to the controller. So that's all that does is give you an easy out, basically. So the way
Uh huh.
we've configured our machines, and you can do this however you want, it's standard USB stuff. It has nothing to do with the laser at all. It just happens to be stuck to the lid. It doesn't interface with the electronics. At the end of the day, the camera sticks on the laser and it plugs into your computer, and the laser doesn't matter at all. So, what we came up with was to unhook the UDisc port because most people don't use the UDisc in most applications. So, basically, what you've got is the other end of that connector that's at the power cord right here. So we put a gender changer on it and plug the camera into it. So then what in effect we've done is allowed the camera to come out of this USB port, and then we have this adapter to go from that port to the computer. And that's so you don't have to drill a hole. Now, here's another option. Take an Allen wrench and unscrew these two screws and let that connector fall down in there and just push your cord out the hole. because every time you add an adapter or a splitter or anything like that, you're adding noise and resistance to all of those connections. The more terminations and connections you have, the weaker the link gets. So that's what I would do. If I would just take this, and you can put the screws back in it on the backside and just let it fall down. It won't hurt anything just to be on there. And that'll leave this rectangular hole open for you to just push your camera cable right out that hole, and then you can take it over to the computer. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And that way you don't have all the adapters and stuff. If you don't have the length that you need, uh, now, do you have more than one USB port on your computer? Is that an issue that you only have one USB port to deal with?
No, there's two.
Okay, okay. Yeah, it's best to run them separately so you can split that bandwidth up a little bit because that 4K, well, that's not a 4K camera. I think it's about a 2K. I'm working on a 4K 13 megapixel. I've got one in my hand, and it's working with Lightburn, and I've got three different lenses, so we're testing a high definition version of camera to go out sometime in the future. So, um, and beyond that, you should be able to get a good signal after that. And the simplified video, I don't know if you've watched it, this one, that's actually on a Nova
Uh-huh.
51. The only thing that's a little bit different, and let me maximize this for just a minute, and I'm gonna play that and mute it. I'm just trying to find the part that has the visual that I want to display. Let's see. Let me get back. Anyway, there we go. That'll work. The hinge line is the problem on the Nova 51 because we say the camera has to see the entire bed. But from this
Right.
angle, the camera cannot see the entire bed. So,
Okay, yeah,
it,
I noticed that.
yeah, and so you just lose a little bit of it. It doesn't make the camera non-functional, but you can't let that throw you off because when we
Uh-huh.
input the size of this bed, that's the size of the work area, and then wherever you compute that output, that's where it's going to show. And that's what it's
Mm-hmm.
going to calibrate to. So you just won't be able to visually align things back here, but it will the whole thing will still be accurate. So um, that shouldn't be too big
So
of a problem. Hmm.
if I plug my camera in directly to my computer,
Uh huh.
I can see it
Hmm.
like on that preview, but that's all I don't know how to use it.
Okay. Well, you got to calibrate it first, and that's what this video goes over. Um,
Uh-huh.
and I can show you a few little tidbits in that real quick. So um,
Okay.
when we'll we'll go in here, let's add the camera thing. So we'll go to Window and let's turn on the camera control. And then I'm going to see if I can dock it with the rest of them. There we go. And so we're going to choose. Oh, it's not plugged in yet. Okay. So that.
Well,
Hmm,
it's plugged in, but it's plugged into a splitter, and was just trying that one, but I can plug it straight in on my computer.
yeah, let's plug it directly into the computer. Um, And you know what? If you wanted to set up a 30-minute session, we don't have to burn up your hour, doing setups and stuff on equipment. That video is on a 51, and usually everybody gets it perfect on the first shot. If they watch that video, I think it's about 10, 15 minutes long. It's not an hour long. Um, and that may help if you don't want to. There it is. Okay. So we'll go here.
Okay.
Now it's
You want me to lift up the lid?
it's upside down. Yeah. Well, no, the lid needs to be up. Now, did you put two wire ties on either side of the lens to hold that mount together so that the camera board won't slide around in there?
Yes.
Okay. Um, and that's a pretty good view. It's upside down, so you'd probably need to take your thumb screws out and just flip the
Uh-huh.
inside part of the mount around and then screw it back down and secure it. It won't
Okay.
matter. It'll output correctly in Lightburn. It'll calculate for this 180-degree flip. But if you have any amount of OCD whatsoever, you'll
Yeah.
know the laser's supposed to be going one direction, and in the preview it's going the other, and it really messes with you. So
So you can't flip it in the settings.
no, there's no setting to change the angle, because ultimately Lightburn doesn't care how you mount the camera. It'll still compute. So, this is purely how you want to look at it. But for a lot of people, they do say, my camera's upside down and it's fine and it works, but it bothers me. So I just wanted to
Mhm.
mention that before you go through the alignment process, because anytime you make any changes, the critical thing here is that the face of the camera lens is the same distance from the surface of the substrate at all times for the camera to be accurate. Otherwise, your perspective changes, and since you're not looking directly down on it, so does the positioning. So a few millimeters, too close or far away from that focal plane can throw it off, by 5 or 6 millimeters and skew it as far as the
Mhm.
alignment goes. Um, so I would flip the camera around, and let me just walk you through it real quick. I would flip the camera around and get it mounted so that you can make sure that you see the full extents, of this part of the bed and this part, and then of course just to the
Mhm.
hinge line here. It looks like it's a little high right now, but of course when you flip it, it'll be, you know what I mean. Just center up this area, this visible portion, center it
Yeah.
right up. There's a little bit of distortion here, so we're going to call that a fisheye because that doesn't look totally straight to the naked eye. So we can just right click on here, and first we're going to go in and do the lens distortion. Now, you don't have to print out the dots like you used to. Um, so we're going to say this is a fisheye. You can if you want. If you want to bang your head on the concrete, go right ahead. But we're going to choose the 110. That's actually a 120-degree camera, but there's not a lot of difference between the lens profiles between the 110 and the 120. And all this is to take the fisheye out in Lightburn so that everything is to scale and looks straight. So the next portion you're going to go through is this align camera, and this is the part of the video that you need to pay attention to. Is you need to autofocus whatever the material is that you're going to output this pattern on. So I'm going to go next, and so what it's going to do is come up with this screen. Now you're going to want to scale this up because by default this is 8 inches by 8 inches, because Lightburn works with little tiny lasers too, and this is as big as some of them can do, so he makes it defaulted pretty small. If you'll pay attention in that video, they'll show the scale that works well that they used on the Nova 51. But the idea is the bigger this pattern, the more accurate it'll be. Now, there's some caveats to that. If you make earrings, you may want to make this kind of small.
Mhm.
If you cut out signs that hang over couches, you probably want to make this thing as big as you can get it, if as big a piece of material it'll fit on.
Mhm.
But a happy medium, and that's what we have in the documentation, and it's like something like 150 or 170 or 200 scale, 15 inches, 12 inches square, something like that. And then you'll set your speed up. I usually put 500. You can't put anything faster than 500 in this section because uh, the Lightburn works with a bunch of different lasers, and 99% of the lasers out there only max out at 500. So
Mhm.
we can't go any higher on this one. I'm going to turn the air on for this one if I'm doing it, and then I'll set the power at about 20 because we just want to engrave that stuff. And then this is where the scale happens. And so after you get the scale set, you can hit frame and it'll actually put these on the screen where you can visualize how big it is. And then you can frame it
Uh-huh.
to make sure that it's in place and then run it and then do the calibration procedure. It's really, really easy. Um, the important part is to autofocus the material and then, before you output this, and then use the autofocus whenever you're going to use the camera. And then it should remain accurate. And then there's another article in there about um, how to check it and how to use these things. Like for instance, see, you can only if you put a rotary, you don't usually use the rotary with the camera anyway. You don't need to. But let's say you put something like a flask or something in there and it's curved and you can't really autofocus it, just because it wouldn't be accurate. Or if it's a piece of acrylic and it won't autofocus because the beam passes all the way through it. If you if you manually focus it, you need to make sure that you're 6 millimeters from the nozzle, and that is the
Mhm.
same focal length. You see what I mean? If you have to manually focus, try to get it exact. Don't move the nozzle, move the bed or move the object to get the
Yeah.
distance, and that way it'll maintain its distance from the camera correctly. Um, Let me go back to this stuff real quick, and I'm going to leave this tab open. But this is the simplified alignment that's done, and it goes through the entire thing. This talks about how the presets work, and we've already done your lens calibration. We've done the preset. So when you go back over here, all you have to do is right click on this picture, and we already did this part, so you can go right back to that alignment section where you select the camera, and then it's ready to output that, you know, that pattern. That'll get you back to here so that you can set this up and output that. And let's see, let's go back over there. The basics of focus is something that would be, this is some older stuff about it. If you haven't seen the basics of focus video, the second one, I would highly recommend it, because if you want to, for instance, use the camera on a piece of 1/2 inch ply, but you want to cut it, and
Mhm.
you know that you only want your stock 2 inch nozzle to be 2 millimeters from the surface because you want to focus into it. That adds another variable to the thing. So the way I would do that, if I wanted to cut something thick and I knew that I wanted to focus into the material and not maintain the focus on the surface, is I would autofocus the material, and now it's set for the camera. And then you can manually adjust your lens, your head assembly, to manually focus into the material by bringing it closer, and then just tighten the knob back up. Just always remember when you're
Mhm.
done to put the nozzle back up in its, full stop up position, so that you don't have any head crashes. But the first video talks about focus in general, and about how it affects thickness of materials, and how you can get better cuts. And then the second video talks about how our autofocus system plays so well with the camera. So
Uh-huh.
this is some really good stuff here.
Okay.
Um, and if you want to go through the stuff, we can, but like I said, you can do another 30-minute session. Um, did you use vector software before, or are you used to using like Illustrator or CorelDRAW or anything like that? And just do you just import, or is it a little bit of everything?
Yeah, I'm for from Silhouette.
Okay, okay. So you are you designing a lot in that suite, and then just exporting the SVG and then pulling it into Lightburn,
Yeah,
or okay? Have you played with any of Lightburn's vector features and stuff?
a few, not many.
Okay. Um, did you see the video about the
I,
keychain?
yes, I can do that.
Okay. All right.
When
So go ahead.
when when you're cutting, like say I'm cutting a bunch of squares,
Hmm.
and I want to use the least amount of material as possible, and I stack them like right up against each other. How
Hmm.
do you get it to where like the line that's touching only cuts once, and it's not like cutting each individual square?
Right. Go over here to optimization settings and turn on
Uh huh.
remove overlapping lines. And we can demonstrate that real quick. Let me make a real quick, we'll just do 4 and make the spacings 0. There we go. And we can look at it in the preview and see what it does. Let me speed it up a little. There we go. Yep.
Yeah.
So that should fix it. Looks like you have an artifact down there in the bottom. So I might have done that by accident. Looks like it's right there. Yeah, because
Mhm.
drawing squares. I always hate that. You have to go back up to the selection. Now, did you notice? I don't know if Silhouette or any of the other ones have it. When you drag from left to right, you get a red bounding box, and then when you drag from right to left, you get a green one. Have you seen that?
Mhm. I found that out a couple days ago. That was
Okay.
awesome.
Yeah, it is. So you don't have to be, you can be a little sloppy and still just grab that
Uh huh.
inside one. That's pretty cool. So, um, okay, so let's get rid of that. But yeah, that's where you do that, is in the optimization settings. And
Okay.
I guess you could leave it on. I don't see any reason why you'd ever need to turn it off.
Right.
It now some of these things you have to turn off, like hide backlash, because when you do, you notice it toggles a bunch of stuff off and lets graze it out where you can't do anything. So it minimizes the optimizations. Uh,
Uh-huh.
and what that's for, there's an article about that. You usually leave it off anyway. I'll leave that if sounds like this is
Yeah.
something that you do, so I'm going to leave that on. Now, have you
Uh-huh.
seen the tab function?
Yes. I have never used it though.
Okay. So, yeah, we can go into this line and turn on tabs, and we can even make it automatic. So we can say automatic, and we want 4 tabs per shape,
Mhm.
and we're going to skip the inner shapes. I don't know that that matters here. And hit OK. And then if we go into our preview and look real close, there we go. See, it there's a little
Mhm.
little place that it leaves behind, so that you could flat pack it like that, and then the client can pop it out, when they get home. Typically, they're not overlapping, in this instance, I think. Um, Typically, if I was going to do something like that, like Monopoly tiles or do something like that, I would have a couple of millimeters in between, and that way it would just snap out, and then the skeleton would remain. And all the rest of the stuff, I've seen people engrave the instructions in their website and stuff, or, 1, 2, 3, insert tab A to B, and, things like that around the wasted material, and then just stick it in a padded envelope and send it, and all the pieces are still intact. So, like balsa
Uh-huh.
airplanes and things like that, there's people that cut those out and they'll let them stay in there so that they stay, one piece. So that's kind of neat.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
and there's perforation mode also. Some people use this to get a faux stitching look. Um, like if they're doing a leather patch and they glue it on, but they want it to look stitched, they'll create this pattern so that they can create a stitch pattern, and you can define how long the line is and how far the gaps are in the settings,
Mhm.
to get it to your liking. And defocusing will make it thicker. It make turns the beam from a pencil tip to a sharpie, kind of, as you focus and defocus. That basics of focus video go a little more into that, so you can change your output by defocusing a little bit, and make it look a little more natural, and things like that. But that's just something you'd have to dial in. I'm going to turn, yeah, there's the cut and there's the skip, so it's fully adjustable. Um,
Okay.
let's see. Um, Now, as far as the node editing, um, let me see if I might have to break this apart first, because this was made with a creation tool, same way with the text, so that the text in the boxes and whatever's designed can remain editable, where you can change, do all the stuff. You have to sometimes go in here and convert it to a path, kind of like text on the SVGs in a lot of the vector software. You have to convert that
Mhm.
to a path or it won't output with the rest of it. So we're going to convert that to a path. And then we should be able to go into node editing. And now you see you got your nodes. Well, let's say we wanted to add one in the middle. I could hover here and hit the M key, and it would add one at midpoint. I could just go anywhere and hit an I and insert another node. Oops, let me zoom in this way. If I wanted to break it, I could just click B, and that would break it apart. Then you can delete. There's trim and extend. You could do something like this where you insert and then hit S so that you can make smooth, and that way you'll get your drag handles and you can make arcs and do things like that. So it's pretty cool. There's a lot of neat stuff in here. And
Just touch them. Oh, okay.
yeah, right. So yeah, it does. And then of course all the regular Boolean stuff, like this. Of course, if you hold shift, it'll maintain the aspect ratio and you'll have a perfect circle or a perfect square, whatever. And then if you don't hold shift, then you can skew it how you like. But I'm going to do that, and we'll select both of those, and then we can weld those together real quick. So yeah, it's got a full host of the normal stuff that you see in most of the vector stuff. But I love the node editing in this once you figure it out. And you can't do it on a Mac. I haven't figured it out, but I'm going to hover over this. And if you had a Windows keyboard, this would work. And hit the F1 key. It'll bring up the documentation for that particular function. Well, it should. Maybe it did. Are you running multiple monitors? Let me see. Let me
No.
let me click it again. F1 should bring up the documentation. Well, anyway, here it is. Also, is the online documentation right here, and you could just go and look for node editing, and then there's a bunch of hotkeys in here. See, smooth,
Mhm.
convert to line, delete. So insert node point, midpoints, break, trim, and extend. So bunch of cool stuff in there. Their documentation is incredible. Um,
Uh-huh.
is there any other thing that you can think of that you had questions about?
Um. Oh, when I have it on high flow,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes when I'm cutting, it still goes to low flow.
Gotcha.
Why is
So
that?
that is where is it? There it is. There's a sequencing issue, and number three here seems to be the fix. This is what everybody's doing, and use send or shift send instead of start, and I'll explain that. Um, when you hit start, it streams it over to the machine, little piece at a
Uh-huh.
time. And there's no error checking, there are no checksums, there's nothing. So it basically just spews the data at the machine and hopes for the best. That's why USB communications are so goofy sometimes. Now, the reason this happens, it's not that there is a bug in Lightburn and there's not a bug in the Thunder machine, but Lightburn has to work for 99% or of all of the Chinese lasers out there, not just Thunder. And 99% of those lasers don't have a dual stage air assist, and they don't have the TL timer board, and they don't have the maintenance board and all these proprietary systems that are more advanced. So we've gotten it to work with it, but there are a few caveats. Like for instance, on the rotary, most most all of the other lasers use the Y-axis for the rotary, and we use the U channel. So a lot of people have to turn their rotary on and off in Lightburn. If they don't, it'll mess something up. And ours is hot swappable. When you plug it in, Lightburn knows it's on. And when you unplug it, Lightburn knows it's off. So there's some really cool stuff behind the scenes that happen, but there's also some goofy stuff. So if you hit start, you may not get the whole file. Something like this, it would send probably no trouble, because it's so small and it's all vectors. If you're just going to outline that, no problem. But if you had an engraving that was going to take 4 hours and it's streaming along and 3.5 hours into it, somebody kicks on the air compressor or something somewhere and it sends a spike through, and then your job is done and there's no way to retrieve it. So by using send, what happens is, and I'll show you, you'll get you'll get a thing. I don't pay any attention to this because what the way I use Lightburn is I use send just like start, so I don't care what it's called. I'll see it in the thing. If you already have the file named, it'll use the first 8 letters of whatever the file name is, so you will be able to differentiate. You can rename it if you want. I'm just going to leave it Lightburn. So it just sent that entire file in one packet over to the internal memory of the machine, and it will not fail now. Now, here's the problem. You notice the machine didn't turn on and do anything.
Uh-huh.
So in that instance, what you do, and you don't have to actually do it. You'd have to go over to the machine and hit the file button and highlight that
Yeah.
file and then press enter to bring it up to the main screen and then press start. And you may have already done it that way too.
Yeah,
Hey,
I've done it that way. Thing with sending it, like if I needed to go back and recut a section,
mm-hmm.
like the start from here,
Uh-huh.
can I still do that?
You can, but let's say you just needed to let's say, okay, hold on, let's say that you outputted this just for instance, and you needed to redo this one again. All you need to do is
Uh-huh.
turn on cut selected graphics and use selection origin, and then choose the circle. And then if you'll look, the only thing that's going to be outputted is the circle. So you just send the job again, and it'll ignore this outside part because you don't have it selected. So you can selectively pick what you want to output and what you don't. Now, here's another way. You could just make
So
this a
at that,
different color and then just turn the layer off. You can choose
Uh-huh.
whether the layers are outputted or not here. Mhm.
Yeah. At that point, would you just send it, press start, or would you send it again?
I would send it. I always use send. As a matter of fact, there's a place in the software to remove this button altogether. So now there's a happy medium. If you go over to the file list, you'll notice there's nothing there, and that's because it doesn't refresh in real time. So we're going to have to hit refresh. And there's the one that I just did. And so what I'm going to do is, oh, I had to go in here and make a settings change, or I forgot to put the circle on. So let's do this. Let's cut selected graphics, use selection origin, and that's all we're going to output. That's what we want. So I'm just going to send it again, and it's going to be the same name, but who cares? And it's going to say it already exists. You want to override it, and I'm going to override it, and then I just go run the job. Now, here's the cool thing. If you hold down the shift key when you hit send,
Mhm.
it'll go through the same thing with the windows popping up and you naming stuff or overriding or whatever. But as soon as you hit
Mhm.
OK and that process is done, it'll do the same thing. It'll send the entire file over in one chunk to the controller's memory, and the machine will kick on autonomously just like it does when you hit start. So you don't have to walk over to the machine and initiate the job.
Okay.
So, and that's what everybody uses, shift send, because it behaves like start with the exception of you have to, answer a few questions. So,
So, what about when you get up to 100 and then you have to go and clear it all out?
well, it's a good idea to keep this clean anyway. I
Okay.
mean, if it's something you use every day or every week, that's fine. But you can go in here and refresh. Be sure and refresh every time. And if you don't use that one, you can delete it, or you can just hit delete all and just clear the memory completely out. And I won't do that because I don't know if you want to keep that job in there. It looks like a pretty good sized job, so I'll leave it. But yeah, you can manage your thing from here. So
Uh-huh. So, okay, good. So I can just delete from there instead of having to push all those buttons.
exactly, exactly. Yeah, that's why they made the easy button right there.
Uh,
So
okay, so when I'm engraving and I'm like say engraving a bunch of ornaments
okay,
and to engrave faster, I want it to engrave each one individually
correct.
instead of like going all the way. How do I do that?
Okay. So in that instance, let me just duplicate this. And once more, I could have made an array, but this works for what we're going to be showing. So let's go into the cuts layers, make sure these are fills for this application. So let's look at it in the preview and see what it's going to do right now. Whoops, let's get rid of that square. Let me go back out to extents. There we go. We'll lose these dudes. There we go. That's better. Um, so I'm going to turn the transversal moves on. And so right now it's doing probably what you don't want. It's going to
Yes.
scan that entire space back and forth, and that can take a while because there's a lot of white space there. So in that instance, there's a couple of options. You could, if you had multiple objects, you could group them together. Like for instance, if you group these two together, it would do this one by itself, and then it would do these two if you go into your settings here. You see there's fill all shapes at once, which is the way it is now, fill groups together, and then you can group things as you like them, or fill individually. In this particular instance, I would choose fill individually. And now there are almost no transversal moves. It's going to do this one, then it's going to move over, do this one, and we'll look. It's what 4 minutes and 41 seconds on something this small and close together. Probably won't matter, but on something big, it can make a huge difference in time. So this is 4 minutes and 41 seconds. Or is that 4 hours and 41 minutes? I don't know.
Yeah.
I think it's 4 minutes. So let's do fill all at once and see what happens. Okay, it's an extra minute, but it's also a lot. I mean, a minute's a minute. You do this five
All right.
times, you know. So, but yeah, that's how you can choose how stuff gets done.
Uh-huh.
So, uh, and sometimes, like if it's text, you would not want this to be turned on because it would go insane. It would, and go to the next one if it's really small stuff. This stuff is better on large and
So
mhm.
that meant like if I'm doing each ornament at a time with them, I would do fill groups together.
I would do groups and then I would group all the stuff in each ornament. Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. And if the way you're going to do it is make one and then do replicate it with the array tool, just group it before you do the array, and that way you'll have a bunch of grouped items already. You won't have to go back and regroup them individually.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, that's exactly how that would work. Do you have one of the ornaments? We could pull it in and have a look and actually have a look at one of your files if you'd like.
I don't have one ready right now.
Okay,
I
okay.
do have, since I've never done a picture,
Hmm.
and I've had a picture that I've wanted to do for a while, and I haven't done it on it,
Okay. Um,
and I've never done a picture.
yeah. Well, yeah. We can. Uh, let's do it. I'm horrible at pictures, and I've been working with um the guy in England, Russ Sadler. He's been giving me some pointers, but the stuff he's doing is dot to dot. It's a little bit more complex. So
Uh-huh.
you can drag a picture in if you want, and we can have a look at some of the tools. I can't guarantee I'll get it manipulated, so that you'll have the result and output you wish, but I'll definitely give it a shot, and I can show you what some of the things do. Um,
I
I-
brought one to the Lightburn.
okay. So yeah, just pop
I
it
don't.
open. Yeah, see, I'm in a little bit different boat than most people. Most everybody that has a laser has it because they want to make stuff like this and they need it as a tool to help with their, design and their inspiration in making things that they already have an idea about. And I got into lasers because it's motors and wires and switches, and I came from a vertical market that was pretty similar, as the CNC stuff. So I don't have any design skills. If I had to make cutting boards and cups to make a living, I would starve. So my
Uh-huh.
expertise in this realm is rather narrow. So that's a good place. This kind of stuff for the photos. There's a bunch of stuff on the global groups about it, and we still haven't. There's no one size fits all thing. It's basically you just gotta kind of learn it, but it can be kind of crazy. But I can show you about the features. One of the things you got to remember is if you bring in a 1200 DPI image, okay, that doesn't mean that you need to set the output at 1200 DPI because the laser beam can't get that small. All you'll be doing is if the beam, if you don't have your settings right, the beam goes over everything twice and it just wrecks everything. So, all right,
Uh-huh.
this is a good image. So we're just gonna click on it, and then we're going to go to adjust image, and we that's going to be taking a little bit of computing power. Maybe we make it smaller for a minute. Did we lock up, or is my internet having some latency issues? It looks like it's
It's
thinking.
just
Okay, I got it.
thinking.
Yeah, let's get it a little bit smaller to work with.
I also have a question on etching the metal. Is there something I can use to etch color?
Yes. Heaves, well, like the Enduramark and these guys, they also
Uh-huh.
make, some of them. Enduramark does like gold and silver and stuff like that, white. They even make some for glass,
Uh-huh.
so you can do black on glass. And let me lock this aspect ratio and get this to something a little more manageable just for now.
Yeah.
Okay, that'll help with the computing power, I believe. We could apply a mask, but it's seeing that alpha channel, but it's interpreting it correctly, so I don't think we need to mask it. Yeah, here we go. This is better. Okay, so this is a black and white image. If you do grayscale, it's gonna literally. I think I'm zooming the wrong way. There you go. So you can get in here and really see what's happening. Now, as you change your DPI, this is a little high. For the stock 2-inch lens, usually about 0.08, but on an image, you may actually want it to be. You see how things are changing? You can, as
Yeah.
you change your line interval, you can see this in real time. Now we're dithering, and I think you'd probably want to use Stucky or Jarvis um, for this. And as you click the different ones, you can actually see what the differences are. Now, you also have, this is basically unsharp mask or sharpen in Photoshop. You know, they always want you to sharpen it. So
Mhm.
this is the unsharp mask, and so you can define the enhance radius and the level, and that way you can make changes. And it's not as evident in here. Oh, I'm really screwing with stuff because it's taken a little bit to think. Let me slow down a little and let it do its thing. But there, you
Well,
can kind of see what it's doing. Um,
uh-huh.
and as far as what this needs, it's, usually you want a little bit higher contrast and a little bit higher brightness, and you want to add a little bit of enhance radius or sharpening. And then you can zoom back out, and I always forget which way to zoom on a Mac because it's backwards than all the others. There we go. No, I was going to the right place. There's also some software that'll help with it. Now, see,
Yeah, that looks pretty big.
this looks more like what you're after. And as you zoom out, you'll notice as you move your enhance radius and the amount, you can really affect what you want is that almost overblown look, but you don't want to lose the detail. You don't want it to blend. You want to get bright and enough contrast where you can see the detail in areas like this where there's low contrast.
Mhm.
Um, and then you could take a look and see, how Stucky would look, for instance. A lot of people use Stucky. Um, Now, at the end of the day, when you're using any of these dithering modes, you're just laying down dots. So power doesn't matter. You just want it to be the contrast you want because it's either going to lay a black dot or a white dot. Now, if you're doing grayscale, that's a whole nother thing, and that's the hardest one to use. This actually varies the power with the grayscale brightness. So white would be 0% and black would be 100%. And this is how you do 3D relief engraving also, is using a grayscale depth map created from an STL file. So grayscale is pretty difficult to use. I would start off using some of these dithering modes. I would try Stucky and Jarvis. Those seem to be the ones. Those are the go-tos, for these higher resolution images like that. Threshold,
Uh-huh.
and there's documentation about what all of these do in that thing. But threshold is better for black and white, like a logo or something. See, or if you want this kind of effect. So see,
Uh-huh.
you can kind of posterize it, kind of, you know, um, and do stuff like that. So depending on what mode you want, but you definitely want to lighten it up from what and if you look how well it pulls out this fine stuff right there. That's kind of crazy. I don't. Let me pull in a little
Uh-huh.
bit closer. I don't know. That may just be artifacts. Yeah, but then again, you can adjust, and you may want to pull your DPI down a little. Now, again, if you get your line interval too low, it's going to be the line interval is going to be tinier than the width of the beam, and it's kind of like mowing over the same spot twice. They'll overlap, and that can be some uh, and it depends on the
Mhm.
material. A piece of pine is not going to hold 800 lines per inch anyway, just because of the uneven density between the fibers and the soft wood and the hardwood and the grains in it and all that stuff. So um, if you're to get the highest quality output on images, people are doing it on painted ceramic tile and anodized aluminum. Um, Acrylics, things like that, to really get this stuff out. So if you're going to put an image on wood, it doesn't have to be super tuned in and super high resolution. That can actually be going against you. So it goes against conventional wisdom to say I have a 1200 DPI image, but it's only going to output at you know 300. And how in the world could that look good? Um, and that's actually what Russ was teaching me about. And if you want to jump down a rabbit hole, I'll show you a rabbit hole, and I'm also going to show you first a. I don't know if you've seen these materials libraries, not the libraries, but the test files. Uh, I don't like the test file that I made. I mean, there's nothing wrong with it. The 5 and the 10% won't come out because it interferes with some hard coded rules in the controller about speed of the head and whether it uses minimum or maximum power. And in a power scale, you have to set your minimum power at 0. Otherwise, these won't be right because when you set a power scale, it's going to calculate these percentages to whatever your range is of min and max power as you set it in the layer. And so this screws with it because it will not output the 10 or the 5. Sometimes it doesn't cut, and sometimes it cuts every one of them all the way out, like at full power. And that's just because of the way the system is. But and there's tutorials about how power scale works down here. But this is the link that you want to bookmark at some point. And
Okay.
it has tools to do materials tests for cut and fill, to see
Okay,
how
good.
materials do, and you can generate your own here. But here's the one that you may find interesting. This is an engrave interval test. So here's what I was talking about. If you get your line interval too tight, you're overlapping. And if it's tight in both directions, it's going to fill up this area too, and it's just going to blacken out the whole photo. So it's important that you maintain your line interval to actually what your focus is. Focus affects this too. If you focus out 2 millimeters, let's say you have it set up perfectly where your laser dots are all just touching on the edges. You move your bed down 1 millimeter, now they're touching over the top of each other again. The focus is that critical. So the line interval depends on how big around the diameter of your dot that you're outputting. So if you output a dot on a piece of cedar, it's going to be a different size than it would be on a piece of anodized aluminum, like a license plate or a keychain. And this, most people don't dig this far into the rabbit holes. But if you really want to understand how it lays down dots and how it works, this is it. Um, and then let's see if we back up to that article again. There should be a related article over here, and if it's not, no, I don't see it. Let me just type in Russ real quick, and I'll show you the testing that I have so far. This is the Russ Sadler formula for successful photo engraving, and this is using grayscale. This is using the pass-through where you're manipulating the image on the outside. Um, but there's a lot of testing here. The faster you go, you got to consider this laser beam is like a beam of light. The faster you go, when you drag your hand over a flame really fast, it doesn't burn much, but if you hold it slow, it does. It does that. Now, if you
Yeah.
wave that flame, you know how it can move with the wind. These mirrors moving back and forth at 1,000 millimeters per second will turn a dot into a hyphen or a teardrop because the lenses are moving so fast. The optics, uh, they play with the beam signature. You see what I mean? So that's when they talk about if you go too high on your speed, you can start missing dots or missing pulses, or it can act up. This actually this test that I did actually shows that. This one right here, you can that little. I did a. These are all supposed to be dots, or that pattern is supposed to be the same. And once I got past about 300 millimeters per second, it started deforming my dots. So people think, oh, you're going 1,000 millimeters per second is the best, but a lot of times it is not. Not if you're looking for quality, and not if you're wanting to dial it in perfect. At the end of this article is all of the files that we've used so far. The article is incomplete. I have not done it with the HR head yet. And I haven't outputted a successful photo. So it's a work in progress, but I just got my fiber laser and I've been fast tracked to it. So I'm doing fiber stuff now. So I've put this on hold, but his documentation is here and he's got a YouTube channel that would blow your mind. Sebar Multimedia, among others. So there's some, neat stuff in here, but, uh, anything that you have a question about, beyond here, you can just email support at thunderlaserusa.com. And I bet we have an article on it. And our ticket system has shortcut keys. So we've got canned responses, so if you ask a question, we can probably have you an answer in 3 minutes, even if it's a little simple question, so fire away with anything. If you need another 30-minute session, you can sign up for those. If you need another hour, we can probably, work that in. I have a feeling you're not going to need it because you could drive this thing like you stole it, and it looks like that you've already done what you need to do. I mean, so I give you the gold star award, and you're stamped and approved, so you can drive it hard and heavy. So, did you have a laser before this? Any other kind, like even a Glowforge or anything, or a
Yeah,
K40?
full spectrum, but
Mhm.
like, even with this one, like I'm scared to clean the lenses because once those mirrors weren't aligned, it was like done with it.
Yeah, don't worry about that. they'll stay aligned. I've had mine for 2 years, and I've drugged my 4-inch head through my honeycomb and screwed my honeycomb up,
Mhm.
among other things, and I've never done an alignment on it. It's still as it was when I pulled it out of the box. And I move it around constantly because I'm taking parts out of it, or trying to make a video, and I'm moving it around. I don't even put the feet down. I don't even lock the feet. I don't even lock the casters. It rolls while it's engraving. It'll shake back and forth sometimes, but I'm a different circumstance. But yeah,
Is there,
mhm. Go ahead.
is there some kind of fan controller that like Lightburn can control the fan as well, or is it just a manual on and off thing?
The fan
The
is
cloud,
what's
you know how you have to tap it to get all the way up to the high speed?
right.
So I'm wanting a way to just be able to hit it once and it's all the way on high speed.
So are you turning your fan on manually right now?
Yes.
Oh, well, hang on just a minute. I've got a solution for you. The machine needs to control your fan, because the machine keeps the fan on for 15 or 20 seconds after the job is done and then shuts itself off, to eliminate any of the extra smoke. Um,
Huh.
so here's the venting. Let's say using aftermarket inline fans, and you've got a cloud line. So all you need at the bottom of this article is a link. You need this right here. It's like $6. You can get it next day, and plug that into the where the old fan went on the laser, and plug your cloud line in here, and then the machine will turn it on and off. Just leave it on high, and the machine will turn it off and on. It'll stay on high, and it'll be on that every time.
Okay. Perfect.
Mhm. So I'll leave
And
that
then
up so that you can find that link easy. But
oh, the very back of the laser where that little vent is under
um,
the honeycomb.
uh, what are you asking?
It's like the back wall of the laser, like under the honeycomb.
Okay,
Like what's a trick to getting back there clean? Because you can't reach.
underneath the honeycomb.
Uh huh. Like on the back wall
Um,
underneath the tube.
oh, I'm not sure because I've got it over 35 and I can reach mine.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, the 61100 that I've been using, like hers is like completely black back there, and it's like I don't want mine to get like that.
gotcha.
But
I'm not sure exactly which part you're referring to. You talking about just that shelf, like where the pass
pull
through
up
is?
no below. If you pull up that cleaning video, it kind of shows you like a good picture. Um, huh? Yeah, where the vent tube comes out.
Oh, you talking about that grate that's there, like where the
Yeah,
exhaust goes out?
yeah.
Um, yeah, there's no real easy way to get to that. You just gotta either, I mean, you could
Just an
probably,
extension.
yeah, unless you use like a duster or something, turn the exhaust fan on and use a duster and let it suck it out. That's what I do. I just use a broom or a duster and just knock the stuff off of it while the fan's running. You can manually turn the fan on. Um, right here, let me right click on here and open this in a new tab. The TL timer board inside the machine allows you to test and adjust the time, for how long the components stay on after the machine's done, and some things like that. But there's a switch right here. And if you turn that switch
Uh-huh.
on, it's going to turn on three things. It's going to turn on the exhaust, which is channel 3. It's going to turn on the high stage air, which is 4, and the low stage air, which is 5. So when you flip that switch, both of your green air lights are both going to come on at the same time. It activates both relays, and it turns on the exhaust fan. So what you can do is just flip that switch and then take a broom and knock that stuff off, and it should just suck it right out. So, I mean,
Okay.
that's how I clean mine. I let the fan run while I'm dusting. That way, it'll evacuate the dust and it doesn't just get back into the room. As far as getting back there and cleaning it, yeah, that's just you just have to climb that hurdle however you can. Um, You could probably lay a piece of plywood or something or cardboard across the honeycomb and just, kind of lay over there if you wanted to. I know that's not ideal, but it's kind of like crawling under the car to change the oil. It's kind of a pain, but sometimes you got to get in there and do it. But
Yeah.
um, let's see. But yeah, I think that's about it. You're leaps and bounds and ahead of a lot of people, because a big majority of our people don't have never even touched a laser before. So you have an experience with CO2, even though there are some differences. You still have a good idea about, even though speed and power may be different. This machine will act different. You might find that it's significantly more powerful than you would even expect, even with the power differences. But
Uh,
trying to think if there's anything else. I mean, there's a lot of stuff in here in Lightburn that I didn't cover, but I'm sorry. Go ahead.
do you have any on the rotary? I haven't used
Oh,
that yet.
gotcha. So on the rotary, you'll have, it'll be plugged in, and we've got some documentation on how to set it up, and then actually a workflow, on how from start to finish, creating a job and sending it over and everything. Oops, let me get back. Here we go. That's what I needed. Um, Machine settings. I guess it's in tools. Yeah, rotary setup. So if you got
Mhm.
the Rotoboss, you'll want the pick roller, and then let's see, is it reading? Yeah. Okay. So this is settings for the chuck. You want to start off at about 4400.
Uh-huh.
There we go. That's better. Do not ever hit the test button because it will act weird. That's one of those things I was saying. We use a different channel than everybody else does. If you hit test, your Y axis will start moving because most people's Y axis is unplugged at this point. That's how most of the other lasers work. You have to unhook the Y axis motor and run the rotary with that signal. So ours is a lot superior, but it lends itself to little hiccups like this. So the test button doesn't shouldn't be used, and also don't frame from light burn while the rotary is plugged in, because it'll do the same thing. It'll try to use Y instead of spinning the rotary. It doesn't know to spin the A channel using frame and test, but it does the rest of the time. The object diameter, of course, will be whatever your cup is. I'm thinking that a 20 ounce or something is somewhere around 78 or 80 or 88 or 85, something like that. So that'll be whatever your object diameter is. You'll notice the circumference will change automatically. It's automatically calculated. Um, the roller diameter is the diameter of the drive wheels that are actually touching the material. There's those two drive wheels, and that includes the O-ring. So it's the furthest outside diameter, and I forget exactly what they are. They're different on the junior than they are the low roller. The junior and the regular rotobots have the same. I've got mine here. Let me see if I can find my caliper. There it is. And I usually, if y'all have a caliper, it'd be a good idea to measure it and get your own measurement because they may be off a little between what mine
So
may say. Let's see.
both wheels
What's that?
are measuring both wheels.
Well, both wheels that should be about the same. I'm measuring about 56.9 millimeters diameter for my wheels. So you could probably put 56 in there and be pretty, or 57 and probably be pretty safe. And you'll have to
I
dial it in, and there's documentation on how to dial these steps in, and that there's a couple of different
okay.
people with videos out on that as well as the one that we've got. I think the setup video may show doing the 10 millimeter square and measuring it, and then calibrating it so that you actually get that 10 millimeter measurement in the Y or A axis direction technically. So
So once I have that set up, I'm
mhm.
only ever gonna mess with the cup diameter,
Well,
right?
typically is unless you do something that maybe a growler that has a lip on it, and the lip that's touching the drive wheels is not the same diameter as the rest of the cup. I mean, there are some things. I only do 20 ounce if I do them at all, and I only do them for one person because he had me do a few. Now he won't let me stop. or I would. But cups are it's an ATM machine. I figured it out yesterday. He got two boxes. There's 8 in each box. I charged him $20, but since you're my buddy, I'll do them for 15 um, for each of them. So it's $120 a box, 15 bucks a piece. And I figured it out, and it ended up being $180 an hour if I could continuously make those because the workflow is so smooth. It's incredible. I can do a cup in 2 minutes and 38 seconds. And while
Oh yeah.
it's yeah, and then just stick it, if it's a big or if it's a duplicates, multiples, bulk order 10 or 50 or 100 or 1,000 or whatever, you can really make some serious cash on those things. So
Uh-huh.
anyway, um, and those videos are in there about the roller. It's on the cheat sheet. There's two. There's one for the setup, and then one to actually walk you through doing a job. So,
Okay.
and like I said, you can just type in schedule in the search for the solutions database, and you'll see the 1 hour and 30-minute calendar, the articles to get in there and sign up for those if you need some help. And of course, you can just shoot us an email. That's the fastest way. Is just shoot us an email at support at, because we've got multiple agents watching. The UK, Wayne Rees, Thunder Laser UK, Thunder Laser China is in our ticket system. The Rotoboss Rotary guys in our system. So, we've got a lot of the vendors in there. So we've got 5 or 6 pairs of eyes in there, working on the tickets and answering questions. So
So it doesn't matter what time?
doesn't matter what time. Sometimes I've answered questions at 2 o'clock in the morning when I take my dog out to pee.
Oh wow.
People call me a vampire.
Uh-huh.
So, but if I wasn't doing this for Thunder, I would still be answering. That's how they found me. I was answering questions on all the laser forums, like all of them, like 40 different groups. And so if I wasn't doing it for Thunder, even in my spare time, I answer laser questions. That's what I do. That is my fun, playing with lasers and helping people. So, um, trying to see if there's anything else. And I know you'll probably have more questions. And if you get stuck up on the rotary or the camera or any of that stuff, any of that, you can get the 30-minute thing. It's probably best to do a support ticket first, because I might go, oh, yeah, here's a fix. Here's an article that's 2 minutes long. And there's your solution in there. And then if we need to jump in there and initiate a remote session, or if we need to call and talk through it, or both or whatever, we can initiate all that from the ticket. So,
Okay.
and you can
Yeah.
fire
Awesome.
away. Also, the way the ticket system kind of works is if you email it support at thunderlaserusa.com, it'll create a ticket and you'll get an automated response. From then on out, it'll say you can log into your portal and look at your history and all that stuff. Don't even worry about it. You can do it all through email. It'll act just like email as long as you reply to the last uh, email in that thread. And for instance, if we're on a thread, this one's actually about the 1 hour deal. But if you had another issue, you wouldn't want to reply to this one. If you had a chiller problem, I would start a new one and say chiller issues, because we like to keep the tickets separate so that we can watch failure rates and trends and things like that. Or if
Mhm.
we can even diagnose if there's maybe something that's unclear in a manual or something by going back and looking at the frequency of the same question, if it's repetitive, so that we know to go in and do something uh, to help make that, clarify things. So we constantly look at that stuff. So,
Uh-huh. Okay.
so
Well, thanks for all your help.
sure, absolutely. And I did record this, and I'll go ahead and hit stop.